welcome to another up close video. Today's video is looking at the brand new stamps and stencils from Tonic that coordinate with each other. So you get a butterfly design in both a stencil and a stamp, and a floral design in both a stencil and a stamp. Sorry for the state of mine. You can tell I've been really enjoying using them because they're a little bit dirty, and my stamps are very stained already, but I have been stamping them loads of times though. I think I'll show you the design of the stamps on the back of the packaging, and this is how they're designed to work together. So the idea is you stamp what you see as black there, and then you take the coordinating stencil, line it up over the top, and use your like little ink blending tools, or you can spray colour ink through it. You can do it all the same colour, and you can easily line up the colouring, but you don't have to. If you don't want to, you can just colour these in by yourself, and you can also do no line colouring. One of the cards I've done, I did no line like painting with gouache paint, and then once it was dry I brought the stencil back in, but I just used the Fresh Snowfall glitter accents, so it was like clear glitter, giving you the actual detail back into the coloured image, but I'll show you that one as well. But yeah, there's loads of different ways that you can use them, and you don't have to use it as a full thing. You can also snip it into like a square shape, add an aperture over it, or what I've done on a couple of them is I've actually just like snipped out the butterflies and then used the butterflies with the floral design as well. So they're really versatile to use stamp and stencil together, or just stamp. You can even just use the stencil as well, and mixing the two designs together as well. So that is the butterfly background, and then this one is the botanical background. You can kind of see that clearly, but if I show you on the back it's a little bit clearer, and you can see them both next to each other. They're just such gorgeous designs. I really love the like modern look of them as well, and I've done a technique where I stamped the stamp. I did it with the butterfly one. I stamped it onto adhesive, which I'll show you as well, but you could also, if you have heat emboss acetate, you could heat emboss these onto it and like paint them in with glass paints, or some kind of, you could use like the Nouveau Crystal Glaze mixed with shimmer powders to give you different colours and give a good stained glass look, because they've got like quite bold lines. They give that nice sort of stained glass effect as well. So those are the two stamps, and then you also get the coordinating stencils, which if you're stamping the stamps just as they are, when you use the stencil you want to make sure the writing says Tonic Studios, because the other way it's obviously backwards. So if the writing says Tonic Studios, that will match perfectly with your stamped image. However, one of the ideas that I'm going to show you, because I stamped onto adhesive, then I stuck it to acetate, it flipped the design. So for that one I actually used the reverse of the stencil. So depending on what kind of technique you're doing, you might need to reverse it at some points as well, but you can easily tell which way's the front and which way's the back. And you can also just use the stencil like by itself to create the main background as well. I was using this one with some shimmer powders and like adding the shimmer powders to this and then printing with it, and again you can do that one either way around, but the card that I've done, you want to make sure you do it on the back, because then if you print from the back the stamp will then line up with the print that you've got, and I'll show you that card as well. So that is the stamps and stencils. I actually have them in the real packaging this time, so this is how they will come to you. Yeah, I've really enjoyed working with these. I really do love the designs, and I really love the whole concept of it as well, and they line up like absolutely perfectly. I mean, occasionally you'll get some little white areas, maybe where you nudge the stencil as you were inking or something, but I think that really adds to the design, especially if you don't colour the background. Like, you can colour the background, and a good way of doing, like, adding colour to the background is using the back of the stencil, adding your ink to that, spraying it with water, and then printing it back over the top. So then you'll have got the perfect inking of the design by actually going through the stencil, but then you've used the stencil to add the colour to the rest of it as well. But when you get that little hint of white where you maybe haven't quite exactly lined up the stamp and stencil together, I think when you've left the background white, it really ties the design together nicely. So, talking of that, this was the one of the first ones. And you can see here, there are some small little white areas on these top butterflies and on some of the flowers, but it really makes the background not look so harsh because you've got those little white areas elsewhere on the card as well. And this one is just using the stamp and stencil together, so all of the colouring on this card, including the second butterflies that I've stuck on top and left their wings free, that was all just stamping and then stenciling over the top. And I used, I could tell you the colours, so I was using Lime Burst and Dried Oregano for the foliage areas. Then for the pink flowers I was using Lotus Flower. Then for the butterfly I was using a mixture of different ones. The bottom butterfly I used those three, which is Royal Plum, Midnight Surf and Empire Blue, but for the top butterfly I switched out the Empire Blue and added in Laguna Bay, so you got a little bit of a difference with a lighter blue compared to the underneath one. And then for this any centres of flowers, which is more evident on the other one, I used the Rubber Duck ink as well. And this one I made it an easel card so that I could have both of the designs on the same card, and you can see there how I've used the same colours across both of the designs. So it all goes really nicely together. And to get the little stopper bar for the easel card and to get the extra butterflies, I just stamped a whole nother one of the butterfly one out and then just coloured up the butterflies and this bottom strip of the background, and then that was the bottom strip that I've used there to create the little stopper bar for the easel card. And then to add a little bit of something else to it and give it a little bit of sparkle, I've flicked on some Midas Touch of the Aqua Shimmer, and I also painted over the leaves with the Aqua Shimmer as well. And then I also used some Nuvo drops in the centres of the flowers and down the centres of the bodies of the butterfly, and that was the Lilac Whisper Nuvo glitter drop, and the sentiment is from one of the floral frames as well that came out quite recently. So that was the first one. That is just using them as they're intended to be used, so with stamping and then stenciling on top of it. Then the next one is still kind of using them as they're supposed to be used, but this is the one that I did no line painting, and I painted it with gouache. There's actually a video for this one, so this will be a full video of how I created this one. And then once the gouache painting was dry, I then came back in with a stencil over the top and used some fresh snowfall glitter accents to add the glittery detail back over the top, which I thought looked really nice actually. It's quite subtle, but I mean this is slightly more off than if you've just stamped and coloured with the stencil, because I was hand painting it, but I think that gives it a really nice look. So that's that one. And the Wishes is from the new Curio die set, and the Birthday is from the, I think it was called the Scalloped Side Stepper, and it had Birthday Girl and Birthday Boy sentiments, and I just cut the birthday off the Birthday Boy one. So that's that one. Then this is the one doing the idea with the double-sided adhesive and glitter, and this is the reverse of the stamp, so you see you get the opposite impression. So I did a little bit of experimenting with this. So the first one I stamped it straight onto double-sided adhesive. You can use the Nuvo double-sided adhesive sheets, or I recently treated myself to this enormous 6-inch wide roll of double-sided tape, so I've been using that. But I stamped onto the acetate. This one I did with archival ink, and if you do it with archival ink, you can put the stencil straight on top and put your glitter through, so you get it the right way round. And before you put your stencil onto the adhesive, you want to make sure you add some clear sticky ink all over the side you're going to put against the adhesive, because that just means you can easily peel it back off again. yeah, and then using the archival ink means you can work straight on top of it because the archival ink dries really nicely onto the adhesive. And also, don't worry about your stamp getting stuck to the adhesive because it doesn't really stick, it just pulls the ink off of your stamp, which is brilliant because then you get a nice, good impression. And I just did this by having the sheet of adhesive on my desk and then having the stamp still on the acetate and then pressing it onto it rather than using a stamping platform or anything. And so you have the stencil on the design, then you take your glitters, and I was using the Nouveau spoon, which is here. This is the little Nouveau spoon and scoop tool, which is really handy for this. And then I was just tipping on little bits of glitter to all the different places, and I put all of the glitter on first. Then I went in with the lightest colours, so like the pink and the light blue on the butterfly, burnished that in really well, and then went back for all of the other colours and burnished it in really well. Then, if you take the Nouveau Surface Sweep or another kind of a blusher brush or a stiff bristled brush, you want to get all of the excess glitter off of this before you take off the stencil, because if there's any like lumps of glitter that haven't stuck to the adhesive that are left on your stencil, when you pull it off they might ping into the background, and then you'll have random little bits of coloured glitter everywhere. So you make sure all of the excess adhesive is glitter is off of there. Then you pull the stencil off, and then you're left with the exposed adhesive of all of the outlines of the butterflies and the flowers and the leaves and stuff, but also the rest of the background is still sticky as well. So I then used the Ice White glitter from Pure Sheen to add all over that, and then that gives you a gorgeous glittery background. So that is the way to do it if you want the design to be the right way round, which this one is, and if you have archival ink. However, if you don't have an archival ink, all the other inks I tried didn't dry on the adhesive, but if you have an ink that doesn't dry, all you do is take your stamped image, so you stamped on your adhesive, and then I just flipped it and stuck it on some acetate. So from this side you can see the stamped image, but we actually want to work on this side of it and use this side of it as the real card, because I think it looks nicer having the muted lines from the glitter being on top of it. And so then because we stamped this way round, because we stamped it when it was this way round and we flipped it, it's then backwards. So when you'd be working with it, instead of just working straight onto just the floppy bit of adhesive from before, you're now working onto the acetate, but so you need to remove the other side of the adhesive. But the design is now going to be the opposite way round. So whereas before we used it this way round, you can see it's not going to line up because the big butterfly is here. So we now want to use the stencil the wrong way round. And again, you want to make sure you use like Versamark, Clear Mark, Perfect Medium all over your stencil before you stick it onto the adhesive, just so it's really easy to remove it off of the adhesive once you've finished doing all the fine bits of glitter. So I just thought I'd try and explain that technique. I hope it made sense. Jodie might demo it on the telly as well. I didn't film this one though, because in the beginning I was kind of just experimenting. I wasn't sure if it would actually work, but it does, and I really love the result of it. So I thought that was a really cool way of using matching stamps and stencils, because I've seen this technique done before where they've stamped onto adhesive and then used a craft knife to like cut bits of the backing paper away, peeling them off and using like gilding flakes, or just taking the whole backing off and using gilding flakes. And I've also seen people using stencils on adhesive and adding one lot of glitter and then removing it and then adding a different colour of glitter, but I've never seen anybody use coordinating stamps and stencils to do this technique, so I thought that would be a really cool one to show you. Then what I was saying before is how you can like mainly focus on the stencil rather than the stamp. I did use the stamp on this, but this is how I did the main background of it. So for this one, because I knew I wanted to use the it's that way up, because I knew I wanted to use the stamp, I needed to use the wrong side of the stencil. So on the opposite side of the stencil where the writing is backwards, I tapped on shimmer powders. I used Violet Brocade, Lilac Waterfall and Cherry Bomb, and sprinkled them all on, spritched it with lots of water, and then flipped the stencil and printed the design that way. And then I got this kind of a result, and obviously I'd done that twice because I got this one here. And it kind of gives a cool look because it's all of the focal points aren't coloured, but just the background is coloured. And what I was saying earlier about using, like doing the whole, actually using them the way they're supposed to be with the stamps and stencils, but then if you did this technique with, you could just do it with like a distress ink, an oxide ink, or you can use shimmer powders or spray inks, whatever you have really, that's water based. You can do this technique then with the stencil and colour the background of this image as well, so you don't actually have to do any colouring if you don't want to. You can do all of it with inking and like ink and wet techniques to get the background colour on as well. But for this card I wanted to add the heat embossing on as well, but you could do the heat embossing first. However, you wouldn't get a very crisp result for the background, and it'd probably be really patchy because the stencil wouldn't be able to have enough contact with the card because there'd be raised embossing in the way. So you kind of have to do it backwards. But I did find it really easy to line the stamp up because I literally just had the piece of card like this, inked the stamp up with clear sticky ink, and then hovered over the top with it still attached to the acetate. So I just take the one side of the acetate off and leave the one that's got the pattern on the back of it, and then literally just lined it up and pressed it on. And then I heat embossed it with the crushed mulberry Nouveau embossing powder, and then I think it gives a really cool look because you get that sort of watercoloury, washy, effortless background, and then when you add the detail on the top it cleans up all the lines for you, but gives you sort of an uncoloured focal element but a coloured background, and I just thought that was a really cool technique. So that is that one as well. Then I also did a couple of other ones using them slightly differently. So for this one, actually let's just look at this one first. So this is actually a kind of style of card that I used to make a lot. I even have one random one that's been there for like 5 years. Similar layout idea. That's one of my favourite layouts to do. No, it won't stay back over there. But for this one, I created a like washy, messy, inky background just by squeezing out some aqua flows onto the Easy Clean mat, you know, the white one that comes with this glass mat, and I was using the flamingo pink, the tomato juice and mango mimosa. Oh, and I also scribbled on some of the Sweet Apricot Nouveau glitter marker as well to get a bit of glitter in the background too. And so all I did was squish the card into that inky mess, which initially gave me a background that looked like this. Then I took the butterfly background stamp and I had it in my hand. So I have not actually even taken the stamp off of this backing sheet. I've just been using it like this because I find it it works really nicely like this. You could do lots of different techniques and it saves you the trouble of trying to line it back up with the image on here as well. But so all I did was take, it was the Poppy Red Nouveau ink pad, one of these large ones, and I inked up the butterfly. Yeah, I was using the big one. So I inked up the area of the butterfly, and then on here I just pressed down just where the butterfly was, and then I also repeated it with some of the flowers as well. I did get a bit of transfer from the black that was already on my stamp, but I think that extra little bit of darkness tied in nicely with the black stamping from the butterflies as well. Then for the actual butterflies, I did the same technique of doing that, except I used black ink and just put it on the small butterfly and then stamped that out 3 times. And then I used the same aqua flows to colour these in. So nowhere have I used the stencil to add colour. I've just been using the stamp as if it was just like a normal background stamp, which it is. It just so happens to have a stencil that coordinates. But to give the background a little bit more interest, I then came back in with the other stencil. So I came back in with a botanical stencil, which is this one, and I actually used some Nouveau glitter accents. This is the Harvest Moon colour, and I just scraped some of that through the stencil just to give a little bit of background interest. But I mean, if you'd only bought one set of them, you could easily use parts of the butterfly one to add some detail on there too. And I also smudged some of it out with my fingers just to add that colour around the rest of the card as well. But I think that looks really lovely, and you can see how well Tonic stencils work with their like more 3D kind of mediums as well. And then this sentiment is just one of their vertical sentiments. I think they were called sentiment duos, perhaps. And it comes with thanks going vertically and thanks going horizontally as well. So that is that version of the card. So mainly focusing on the stamp really, and using it to create a cool messy background, and then just watercolouring it as well, and then using glimmer paste through the opposite one stencil. One thing about this stencil, try to be a little bit careful when you're cleaning it, because I've sort of like bent those little bits up a little bit. It's not too bad though, because when you're inking through this onto the background stamp, if you already stamped it, these are like already stamped, so it doesn't matter too much if they're not quite in the right place. But if you want to do this kind of a technique, you kind of want them to be still flush down, so you get the actual impression of the veins of the leaf. But that's just one thing to note, just be careful when you're cleaning them, because I was scrubbing at this with a paintbrush, so that was probably why. Yeah, so then the final card that I've done, I wanted to show how you don't have to use it as a whole design as well. So for this glittery one, I just used a portion of it and made it square rather than being rectangular like all the other ones I did. And then for this one, I've just stamped out, I stamped one of each background, and then I coloured in the 3 large flowers. There's only a tiny bit of one of them, but I coloured them in and their foliage as well, and then the small butterfly from the other one. So I just coloured them in with alcohol markers and trimmed them out as if they were just normal stamped images, and then just used them within an aperture as well. And then I brought the stencil element in. You could have coloured these with the stencil as well if you want to. That's the beauty of it. You don't have to do all of this colouring if you don't like doing that. You could recreate this same card but colouring the images using the stencil if you want to as well. But anyway, to bring the stencil element into this card, I used the 2 butterflies and some pure platinum Nouveau mousse just to add 2 little embellishments to the top and bottom corners as well, and tie the butterfly element into the card too. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this little look at the stamps and stencils from Tonic, and a few little examples of ways that you can use them as they're supposed to be used with this stamp and stencil together, or you know, just some of these are just general ways of how to use background stamps really, because that's what they are. The 2 stamps are just background stamps, so you could just get the background stamps if you wanted to and completely ignore the whole stencil element of them. But if you want to give that a try, then they have the stencils to work with them as well. So I think they're a really versatile, really cool product to use. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you again in the next one. Thanks so much for watching. Bye!